Hey y'all, so we got some new packs and stuff coming tomorrow on the 13th of July, including some really interesting stuff that I want to talk about today, being Traptrix. Of course, the other stuff I could cover, but I don't have enough practical experience actually playing those cards in the IRL TCG, so we're gonna have to talk about the deck that is likely to land you on a watch list, Traptrix. So, first of all, let's go over what we're gonna talk about today in this little Master Duel support report of sorts. So we're going to first talk about what Traptrix already could do and what they had access to. Then we're going to talk about the issues that they had and how the new support addressed them. And finally, why you should care about Traptrix. Of course, there is the idea that you should know about them so that you know what to do when you're going against them, sure. But also what's important to know is whether you should play it or not. How could it benefit you? So anyways, let's get into the main meat and potatoes of this video. That sounds really bad in the context of this archetype, the Traptrix. So mainly the Traptrix consisted of two components. The first one being the trap holes. The trap holes are a sub-archetype of, well, I like to say that, of trap cards that essentially like to encompass ensnaring, restricting, and or removing monsters. So basically, literally most offensive traps. This can include things like Gravedigger's Trap Hole, which is very infamously a very funny way to negate Ash Blossom. We have things like Bottomless Trap Hole, which is an extremely funny anti-branded tech that actually kind of mattered when this deck first came out. Shocker. And finally, we have things like Floodgate Trap Hole. For all my Pendulum haters out there, flip this thing and our opponents are never flipping their Pendulum Summon monsters after a while, which is very annoying because they love Link Summoning. And the second component of the Traptrix being the actual Traptrix monsters themselves. In theme, the trap holes are literal holes that you're gonna lure your opponent's monsters into. And in those holes, the actual baits are vaguely child-looking plant girls and insect girls. Again, this is why it's likely to land you on a watch list, and believe me, I wouldn't really choose to get these cards if they weren't so cheap IRL and such of good value, which I'll talk about later in the terms of why you should care about them in the first place. Mainly, the star of the show when it comes to the Traptrix, when it comes to enabling them, setting them up, and overall just Traptrix shenanigans, is of course Traptrix Sarah. You must have seen this card, and if not, see it now. And so, now let's go over what the actual deck does. Mainly, the deck before the support kind of was just exactly Traptrix Sarah set back row pass. Now what Sarah does is very good and is a very powerful card, and there's a reason why the deck kind of worked if you just made it and then passed us some traps. So Sarah's got two effects in addition to being unaffected by traps, which basically all your regular Traptrix monsters are. Number one, if you activated a normal trap, so this is similar to Labrynth in that sense, you are able to special summon a Traptrix from your deck to your side of the field. Now this isn't as good as you think, but it's still really nice for the deck. And second, when you activate a Traptrix monster effect, you are then able to set any trap hole from your deck to your side of the field. And you can activate both these effects in the same turn, so ideally you are trying to set up both these effects, but normally the way traps work and how you have to set them before you activate them, most turns would just be make Sarah pass on some back row, and then after you reactively use some traps, then end up using the effect to Sarah. Now, of course, what were some exceptions to this? Of course, the deck should have ways of being able to access the extra deck, or rather access their main deck with Sarah when it comes to going first. And they did. It was called the Phantom Knight Shade Brigandine. This card is obviously outside of archetype and is not searchable, so therefore it wasn't exactly ideal. And while Traptrix had some nice starters in their capacities, things like Traptrix Mantis, which is more of an extender slash endboard thing, where on normal summon you get to add a monster, or more infamously, Traptrix Mermelio, which lets you search for a trap hole on summon, normal summon specifically. You weren't able to actually do a turn 1 setup if you didn't just hard sack into Shade Brigandine, or something like a Swamp Mirror that you would have to wait on a turn to actually use. So for now, it's just not really that good. Also, Swamp Mirror is a continuous spell trap that I just noticed, so it doesn't work with Sarah. Now that we've kind of gone over what the deck actually does before the support, which is not much to be honest, it's just trap go burr, let's go over what the deck got. And spoiler alert, I think I kind of really heavily leaned on the fact that it really needed a way to go first and activate some traps to get the extension effect off Sarah, to then capitalize off of it as much as possible. And they got that with Traptrix Holutea. Aside from having a kind of weird name, not gonna lie, this is basically just Shade Brigandine. When you set it, you're able to then summon it from your spell trap zone as a monster, and that already activates Sarah's effect in order to special summon a Traptrix from the deck. Additionally, this isn't a continuous trap, which is very nice, because again, Sarah wouldn't be able to activate if it was a continuous trap. And lastly, you can activate this the same turn you set it by discarding a trap. Discarding the trap is actually kind of nice as well, because you're able to set up your graveyard for someone like, I believe, Vesiculo, Again, read these cards in particular if you're interested. I'm just going over the general gist of things, but that was already really nice. And if you're going first and opened an evenly matched, now your evenly matched has a bit more use, being able to be used as discard fodder for Holutea. Additionally, with the way with Traptrix Holutea is written, it's actually searchable off of one of the starters I mentioned, Traptrix Myrmeleo. And because of that, it's just instantly way better of a deck, because now you have a searchable Shade Brigandine, with Myrmeleo, of course. So yeah, that's kind of what the deck got, and it fixed a lot of their problems, but of course, there were other problems that the deck needed to kind of confront in order to really solve their big problems. Mainly, the fact that they weren't big. Small-bodied monsters, not much extension enabled, and also a lack of protection, because with back row reliant decks come HFDs and lightning storms all over the place, and having no way to prove yourself from those obviously really sucks. So the deck got a really nice tool in the form of something you can actually search with Mantis. So now Mantis is a more proactive card that you can have make an immediate impact once you normal summon that little thing onto the field. That being Traptrix Arachnocampa. Traptrix Arachnocampa is of course level 4, and basically it is a non-inherent special summon from your hand. I mention this because it is an activated effect that your opponent can chain to, but because of that, Traptrix Sarah can activate off of Arachnocampa. Additionally, Arachnocampa, in addition to being an extension tool, says that while it's on the field, the first time your Traptrixes are destroyed by battle or card effect, or the first time your spell traps that are set in the back row are destroyed by battle or card effects, really? How do you destroy a spell trap from battle if it isn't a monster? It is not. So that's the protection I was talking about, and of course it's extension, so who the hell doesn't want this? Because now you're able to make more rank 4s. A word of caution though with Arachnocampa, even though it is a wonderful target to search off of Mantis, which is now a more proactive card as I mentioned, it does lock you into Traptrix monsters essentially. So you can't make things like Wiguska or Abyss Dweller as a sideline. You kind of have to stick to the insects, which isn't really much of a problem since your insects are good, but still, something to be aware of, it can impact your flexibility. Additionally, Traptrixes also kind of needed extra extension. The thing with Mantis and Myrmeleo was that, as I kind of really alluded to, their effects to search and be starters only work on normal summon. So Traptrix Sarah special summoning them from deck doesn't actually do much, and the only somewhat decent card you could special summon from the deck to have an okay impact was Myrmeleo, which makes you run out of copies from your deck. In addition to that, Myrmeleo only pops back row when it's special summoned from the deck, or special summoned from anywhere for that matter. It's a little bit more niche because back row decks or back row reliant decks aren't that common. Sure, there might be the couple common denominators like field spells or continuous spells, but overall, it's not the biggest incredible situation to find yourself in that you're summoning a Myrmeleo from the deck. Of course, we now have a card that addresses both those problems. We have Traptrix Pudica. Now, Traptrix Pudica is pretty simple. When you normal summon it, you are able to then search for a field spell. This field spell is a Traptrix Garden. All you need to know about this, there's only one part that you need to know about this field spell, and it gives you an extra normal. That's it. It just gives you an extra normal. So now you've kind of addressed the issue where if you have too many good cards in your hand, like both a Mantis and, let's say, Myrmeleo, now you can normal Pudica, normal the Myrmeleo, and now you have an extra body on the field to make an extra rank 4 or be extra link fodder if you're going second. It is wonderful as a tool to have. In addition to that though, Traptrix Pudica is also incredible because if you special summon it, you get to target a monster on the field and banish it. It's another actually good target to summon off of Sarah that has an immediately more profound impact. Sure, that isn't the most incredible kind of removal, but it's way better than summoning Myrmeleo because you're not really going to guarantee to have any back row 2 pop. Also, Myrmeleo was a mandatory effect, so that was also a bit more janky anyways. So yeah, Pudica solved those two issues with Traptrix Garden. In addition to that though, Traptrix also got two other extra nice cards in the extra deck. Mainly, we have number 1 being Pinkakula. It's a generic, which lets you then just detach material to search for a Traptrix. This is important because it's now an additional way to access your Arachnocampa, just in case you don't have a way to normal summon it and then search off of Mantis. Again, the deck is a bit jankier because you have to specifically normal summon their starters, not that you could special summon them and that they do the exact same thing, like in Sword Soul, i.e. one of the most boring decks I've ever seen. Quite possibly ever. Sorry, pack. And finally, we have Traptrix Adipus, which kind of helped solve the issue of you just didn't have big enough things. You didn't have a way to clear your boards going second, because Adipus is a link 3 that boosts all your Traptrixes by 1,000, which believe me, can be more significant. In addition to that, it also could then target other monsters on the field, equal to the number of Traptrixes you have, vaguely speaking, that's paraphrasing essentially, to then negate their effects, effectively being a Dark Ruler no more, and in general, really nice card to have, helps close games out extremely easily, and of course, the whole shebang gets accompanied by the fact that it's a rank 4 abusing deck, so things like Baguska, things like, let's say, Utopic Future Draco, and of course, the Zusty Zeus boy, are incredible to have in this deck as well. So then, how are you translating this over to Master Duel? Well, with these new cards in hand, you're basically running the same rank 4 staples, the same general good traps, except you now have a more concentrated monster core, and you now have a more, I guess, streamlined goal. You want to essentially get Holy to resolve with Sarah, and you want to get as many things on field as possible. Ideally, a really good end board would be a bunch of set traps, a Sarah, an Arachnacampa, as well as maybe a Rafflesia or a good rank 4. And finally, what can you take away from this video? Well, first of all, to know what to do against Traptrix really Sarah's the root of all problems, so you want to negate that effect, but also you want to prevent them from even getting monsters onto the field in the first place. So if they normal summon their Myrmelio, if they normal summon their Mantis, get rid of that. If they have Arachnacampa, that is an immediate threat because it stops you from interacting with their back row, so go ahead and get rid of that before you even think about touching the rest of the Traptrix monsters. And, well, just be more scared of this deck, because it can actually do some kind of scary things if you allow it to, of course, and if you don't pay attention to what I just said. And lastly, this deck kind of matters to you personally because it's a wonderful gateway to the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG. Playing the cards IRL is on the more expensive side. I've had some discussions with people where they kind of consider that, hey, if it's a hobby, you should be investing into it, so a couple hundred here and there shouldn't really matter, but it should, because you aren't always invested into something from 100 at the get-go. You need some sort of gateway. Traptrix are a wonderful way to do that because they come in a structure deck. You buy 3 copies of that structure deck, you get a free Ash Blossom as well as an evenly matched. Very valuable cards to have in this modern day and age since you need staples, and they are generally the harder cards to obtain. And with, like, what, a 30 extra bucks, you're able to get Zeus, you're able to get some good rank 4s, and you're able to get some Parallel Exceeds, which you're gonna need for this deck, and overall, it's just a much better time if you start off the game by getting 3 of a structure deck and some extra cards, because now you have to stress less about using things like TCG Player or Card Market, things that are gonna be kind of foreign to you when you're starting to play this game, and hey, it was low cost enough that you didn't spend hundreds and then just bail. So hey, that's it, and I haven't made a video in a while. I know, I've been kind of, and my exams have ended, I'm in summer holidays, I might make more stuff, who knows. Not me, to be honest. More content maybe, but hey, if you really enjoyed this, then I would suggest going to potentially watch the short that you're probably going to see on screen, if YouTube allows me to show it, or